Hello and welcome to another Momentum Bible study on video. And it's my pleasure to come to you from one of my favorite places on earth, Flaming Spirit Camp. And going to have some bad news and good news today. And so we'll get to the bad news first and get it out of the way. And the bad news is that the camp board met last night, and Flaming Spirit will not be in session this June due to the situation going on in our world. We just believed it was the most responsible and best thing that we could do considering the circumstances. We do have some hope that maybe later on in the summer when things clear up and maybe get back a little bit towards normal, we might be able to plan some mini camps or retreats or something to get us a little time over here in this awesome place. But until then, we're not going to have any sessions in June. So that's the bad news. And so now we get to come with the good news, and the good news always comes from the Bible. And before we get into the text today, I remember the movie several years back of The Bucket List, where a couple of guys that had put together a list of things that they wanted to do before they passed away, and that they went on this journey to start scratching things off their list of things to do. And these big ideas, big plans, things that you wouldn't do on a normal daily basis maybe. And so I got to thinking about bucket list ideas, and maybe I've crossed a few off my list, and maybe there's several to go, but those are big monumental things that we want to do, and typically they revolve around things that we want to do, things that we want to see, and people that we want to meet, or just experiences we want to have. And I hope you have some bucket list things. I hope there's some big dreams, and I hope you've consulted God in these things too. But I was just thinking about that as I was preparing for the study today, and we're going to be talking about a fairly familiar character. You've probably sung about him from the time that you were really young, and we're going to be talking about Zacchaeus today, and this desire that he had to see Jesus. And we know some things about him, about who he was before he met Jesus, what changed about him when he met Jesus, and I want to get into those things today. And so I'm just going to start by coming to the Gospel of Luke, the good news from the Gospel of Luke, and starting with verse 1 and going through verse 10, and encourage you guys to read along with me as I read these passages. Then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Now behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. So he ran ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him, and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. But when they saw it, they all complained, saying, He has gone to be a guest with a man who was a sinner. Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Lord, look, I give half of my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold. And Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house, because he is also a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which is lost. The first thing I want to talk to you about today is that I want to see Jesus. And I don't know that seeing Jesus was on Zacchaeus' bucket list for his life, but I do know that Jesus was quite popular, and Jesus was had created quite a name and quite a stir that everywhere he went. To this day, he comes into Jericho, and here's this Zacchaeus guy who has a reputation. He has a reputation as a tax collector, and tax collectors, kind of like today, they probably aren't the most popular people. But Zacchaeus was even worse, because he was not good. He was a conniving tax collector who cheated people, and probably did not have much good stature among the people. The people referred to him later as a sinner, as somebody who was not wholesome, not good. And to add to the situation, Zacchaeus was short. I don't have anything against short people, neither does the Bible, but the Bible makes note of this because of what Zacchaeus had to do to see Jesus. I'm not sure why Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus that day. I'm not sure what the draw was for him, but there was something that drew him to the point of going to great lengths to see who this Jesus was. And so it says, because he was short and he couldn't see through the crowd, and people probably would not part the way to let this evil tax collector come and have a place in front, said he climbed a tree, climbed a sycamore tree so that he could see Jesus. I hope in our life we come to the point that we want to see Jesus, that we want to see and discover who this is, who he really is. And that was Zacchaeus' desire, was just to see this, who everybody was talking about. See this man who there was incredible claims made about, and just to cast eyes on him. And maybe you've gone to that point where you've somebody that you look up to, or somebody that you've heard a lot about, and you knew that you were going to be in the same proximity, and you just want to see them. And I go to Chiefs training camp, and part of the reason I go is, man, I just want to see these guys that I watch on TV play football. This last year, I was able to see Coach Reed and Patrick Mahomes and see them have a conversation. I didn't gain anything by this, really, just maybe a little bit. I felt a little bit of insight into the Chiefs huddle, maybe a little bit, but I just got to see them, and that was important to me, and that's one of the reasons I took time out of my day to go and see that. And so this is kind of where Zacchaeus was. He just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. He wanted to see what this Jesus was like. And so in this story, it says that he was able to climb the tree, but it didn't just say that he saw Jesus, but that Jesus saw him. Out of all the people in that crowd, I just can't imagine maybe all the dignitaries, all the famous people, all the upstanding people, all the rich people and everything that might have been in that crowd that day to come and see Jesus. Jesus takes note of the sinner. Jesus takes note of the person who most people would tend to rather not notice. The outcast, the sinner, the evil one, the reject. But Jesus takes notice of him up in the tree. And not only does Jesus take notice of him because of his desire, Zacchaeus' desire to see him, but Jesus says, listen, Zacchaeus, you need to come down out of that tree, because out of all these people in the crowd, I'm coming to your house today. I want to come pay a visit. Jesus, there was no social distancing order in that day, and Jesus invited himself to Zacchaeus' house, and Zacchaeus says, yeah, joyfully accepted his request, the text says. And so Jesus comes down out of the tree. I guess in this first part of this, I just hope that you want to see Jesus. I hope at some point in your life, and no matter where you're at now, no matter what you may think your life condition is right now, I hope there's a desire in your life that you want to find out more about this Jesus, and you want to see who he really is, to seek him earnestly and see the reality of who Jesus is, because Jesus will reveal himself to you if you honestly seek him. I pray you've been drawn into him, and Jesus draws us to come to get to know him. Come and see, he says. And I pray that you want to see Jesus. But there's something that happened because of this encounter, this seeking of Jesus that Zacchaeus undertook. Jesus says, come down, I'm going to your house, and Jesus came to his house. And something changed about Zacchaeus when that happened. You see, I don't just want to see Jesus, I want to be changed by Jesus. And I hope that's your desire too, that we don't just be a spectator of who Jesus is, but that we be a participator in what Jesus is doing. And that's what Zacchaeus did. It says that when Jesus came to Zacchaeus' house, he said, look, Lord, I give half my goods to the poor, and I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, and I'm going to pay them multiple times back. I want to restore what I've done wrong. You see, something had changed in Zacchaeus because of his encounter with Jesus, and that's what Jesus does. Is that when we come into contact with the Creator, the Savior, the Redeemer, and the Judge of creation in the universe, something changes. Our life changes. I know I've told my youth and some other people before that, you need to go try a Krispy Kreme donut. It'll change your life. Well, I'm really just kind of joking about that. It may change the way that you view donuts from then on, but it doesn't really change your life. I can just tell you that when you come in contact and you taste and see that he is good, it changes your life. I don't believe anybody ever encountered Jesus that they didn't walk away different. Jesus changed the disciples. Jesus changed Mary. Jesus changed cities. Jesus changed communities. Jesus has changed the world. And so I don't believe that we can come in contact with him, that we truly meet him and see him and not be changed because of it. I believe we are changed. And I believe this day, Zacchaeus was changed because of it. I don't want you to make the mistake of thinking that these things that he did was the reason that Jesus said salvation had come to the house. Salvation had come to his house because Jesus is salvation. And salvation has come to Zacchaeus' house. And because of this salvation coming to visit Zacchaeus was changed. Not that because Zacchaeus did these good things and tried to restore what he had done wrong that he had found salvation, but that he had found salvation, so this had changed inside Zacchaeus. And that's, I hope, our desire too, is that we don't come to see Jesus to walk away and be the same. That we come to see Jesus, and that Jesus is allowed into our life, and that salvation happens. And then he changes us. He changes who we are. He changes what we do. He changes our outlook on life. He changes the course and destiny of our life. What a wonderful thought that impact of just this meeting with Jesus could have on Zacchaeus. But yet that's transferred over 2,000 years later to us to say that when we come encounter with the King of Kings, the creator of the universe, our lives are going to be different. Our lives are going to be changed, and for the better. And that what was wrong with us, what was wicked with us, what caused us to be separated from this relationship with God can be restored through Jesus Christ. And that our works, that our good deeds, that our stuff that we maybe have even done prior to being saved by Jesus, which counted as nothing, when we're like filthy rags is what the Bible says. Now that Jesus has redeemed our lives, those things, as a result of our salvation, become ways that we glorify God and that we point to God, and Jesus has changed us in that manner. So not only do we want to see Jesus, but we want to be changed by Jesus. And then the question begs, and it kind of is brought out in the last part of this passage. Well, change to what? Change to what? Well, I hope our desire when we see Jesus is that we want to be changed to be more like Jesus. You see, I don't want to be changed to be like Zacchaeus. It's not a bad thing, and we all have that redemption story where before Jesus, this is what we were like, and when Jesus came into our life, this is how we're changed, and this is the new life that we live, and the ways that he has redeemed us and give us a new purpose in life. But I don't want to be changed just to that point. You see, there's this big word that we use in church that is called sanctification, which means that God continues to work on us to where we become more and more like Jesus. So I want to be changed to be like Jesus. I want to be more like him every day. I want to do what he does. And so in this final verse here, in verse 10, it says, the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which was lost. And I think a lot of times that when we come into that salvation relationship with Jesus, we still focus on us and going back and maybe trying to redo and change all the things that we've done in our previous life to make good for all the bad that we've done. And to a point that there's nothing necessarily wrong with what Zacchaeus did and going and trying to restore these things that he had done wrong and trying to make up for them. But the truth is that we need to quit focusing on what we do and focusing on what Jesus is doing. And what Jesus' mission was and still is to come and seek and save the lost. And he has transferred that mission to us. Galatians 2:20 said that I've been crucified with Christ and that I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. He lives in me. And so if he lives in me, then the change that I need to make in my life is not to become just a better version of me, but to become more like him. To take on the actions, the plans, the ways of Jesus. To do what he did. And Jesus' main mission, that he said the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. So I want to be changed to be more like Jesus. Zacchaeus did a good thing. Zacchaeus came to that point in his life, and he said, those old ways, I'm casting aside, and these new ways I'm taking on. And we don't know the the end of the story for Zacchaeus. My hope is that he became a follower of Jesus, and then it changed him to the point that he got onto this mission with Jesus of establishing a church, a capital C church in the world. We don't know that for sure, but we can know in our own lives, we can know in our own journey that Jesus is in charge. And each day that we open ourselves up to let him search inside us, let him to come into our house to see what needs to be changed to be more like him every day. I guess that's my prayer and my hope for us this week, guys, is that we really focus in this time where we can do some reflection inside of us. And first of all, ask the question, do we want to see Jesus? Have we seen Jesus for who he really is? If not, then take the steps necessary to see who he is. Crack open your Bible, get into the Gospels, get into his word, and find out who this Jesus really is. And once we see Jesus, how much has it really changed us? How much has it affected the way that we do our lives? If it hasn't, have we really seen him for who he really is? Have we really accepted him into our house, into our lives? Because I believe that if we have, we're going to see a difference. How much different is our life after Jesus than it was before when we met him? Because I believe that's a measuring stick to see that God is working in our lives. And what do we want to see Jesus do in our lives? Is it we want Jesus to improve us for us? Or do we want Jesus to improve us, to change us for him, to be more like him, to be more sanctified? You see, I want to see Jesus. I want to see Jesus full and for who he is, and he will reveal himself in truth and honesty to us, and he'll set us free because of that. But I don't just want to see Jesus. I want to see Jesus in me. And I hope that's where you're at today. That more and more, each day that I live, I want to see more and more of myself become more and more like who Jesus is. And the way that we can do that is to get to know who he is, get closer to him, draw close during these times, and let God work on us and tinker with us and change us into who he wants us to be. And I totally believe that he wants us to be like Jesus. Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus. I hope you do too. Zacchaeus allowed Jesus to change him. I hope you let him do that too. And I hope you want to be changed to be like Jesus. God bless you. Look forward to meeting with you again next week on this Bible study time that we have each week on Wednesdays. Pray that God is working in your life, and enjoy a time when we can be back together like normal. Until then, be like Jesus.